Dwight David Eisenhower's life is one of those rare journeys that prove that greatness is not handed at birth but carved through grit, discipline, and vision. Born in 1890 in the small town of Denison, Texas, and raised in Abilene, Kansas, Eisenhower came from humble beginnings. His family was of modest means, his parents were hardworking, and young Dwight learned early on that life would demand effort, sacrifice, and integrity. Growing up in a large family with 6 brothers, he was molded by values of cooperation, respect, and the belief that hard work could overcome even the harshest circumstances. Those early years in Kansas fields shaped his character in ways that later prepared him for the most intense leadership challenges in human history. From an early age, Dwight showed a fascination with history and military strategy. He devoured books on great leaders, especially biographies of soldiers like Hannibal, Caesar, and Napoleon. Yet, his path to West Point was not straightforward. He initially worked after high school to support his family, even sacrificing his own college dreams so his brother Edgar could attend university first. This selflessness was a recurring theme in his life, placing duty and others above himself. Eventually, Dwight secured a nomination to the U.S. Military Academy at West Point, a turning point that launched him into a destiny even he could not yet imagine. At West Point, Eisenhower stood out not as a top student academically but as a disciplined and strategic thinker, excelling in sports and leadership. His resilience, ability to stay calm under pressure, and skill in uniting people around him hinted at the qualities that would later define his military and presidential success. After graduating in 1915, part of the class the stars fell on, because so many became generals, Eisenhower began his army career in a world that had not yet seen the full scale of modern warfare. When World War I broke out, Eisenhower was eager to serve overseas, but instead, he was assigned to training and stateside duties. Though initially disappointed, this period became critical in shaping him. He mastered logistics, planning, and the coordination of large groups, skills that later allowed him to command massive armies in World War II. Unlike many officers who chased glory at the front, Eisenhower was learning the science of organization, supply, and cooperation. He came to understand that wars were not won by soldiers alone but by the systems that supported them. The interwar years tested Eisenhower's patience. He served under great mentors such as General Fox Connor and General Douglas MacArthur, absorbing lessons on strategy, diplomacy, and command. While posted in the Philippines under MacArthur, Eisenhower sharpened his skills in balancing egos, navigating politics, and building effective coalitions. Eisenhower's transformation from an obscure officer to the supreme commander of Allied forces in Europe was not an accident of fate, it was the result of decades of preparation, character building, and a reputation for competence that spread quietly until the world finally recognized him. By 1942, the Second World War had become the deadliest conflict in human history. Nazi Germany had conquered much of Europe, and the Allies were desperate for leaders who could not only design brilliant strategies but also unify fractured alliances. Eisenhower's appointment to lead the European theater came as a surprise to many, but it reflected his unique gift, the ability to bring order, clarity, and unity where chaos threatened to divide. One of the earliest tests of Eisenhower's command came during Operation Torch, the Allied invasion of North Africa in 1942. Coordinating an operation of such magnitude required not only military genius but also diplomatic finesse. The operation involved American, British, and French forces, all with their own objectives and egos. Eisenhower proved himself a master at balancing conflicting interests, maintaining harmony among leaders like Winston Churchill and Charles de Gaulle while ensuring American priorities were respected. The operation was a success, and it established Eisenhower as a leader capable of managing both the battlefield and the political chessboard. As the war raged on, Eisenhower's responsibilities grew. Operation Husky, the invasion of Sicily in 1943, was another crucial milestone. The campaign helped pave the way for the liberation of Italy and further demonstrated Eisenhower's capacity to oversee vast, complex operations. Yet it wasn't just military decisions that tested him, it was his ability to handle personalities like General George S. Patton, whose brilliance was often overshadowed by controversy, and General Bernard Montgomery, whose ego sometimes threatened coalition unity. Eisenhower's genius was not only in commanding armies but in commanding men. He reminded them that the mission came first, and his patience, diplomacy, and sense of fairness earned him respect even from those who clashed with him. Then came the defining challenge of his career, planning and executing Operation Overlord, the invasion of Normandy, better known as D-Day. The operation required coordinating the largest amphibious assault in history, involving over 156,000 troops from multiple nations, thousands of ships, aircraft, and countless logistical details. The risks were enormous. Failure would have prolonged the war and cost untold lives. Eisenhower bore the pressure with characteristic calm. On the night before the invasion, he drafted a note accepting full responsibility in the event of failure, stating simply, "The troops have been withdrawn. If any blame or fault attaches to the attempt, it is mine alone." Dwight D. Eisenhower's story didn't end with his military victories, nor was it fully defined by his 2 terms as President of the United States. His journey from an ordinary boy in Abilene to becoming the supreme commander of Allied forces in World War II, and eventually the leader of the free world, was a long chain of persistence, failures, risks, and unwavering determination. What makes Eisenhower's life incredibly inspiring is not just the titles he earned or the positions he held, but the resilience he showed at every step, the discipline he cultivated from childhood, and the way he used adversity as fuel for his growth. From a young age, Eisenhower understood the value of hard work. Growing up in a modest home where resources were limited, he often had to work odd jobs just to support his family. The young Eisenhower learned early that nothing in life would be handed to him. Every inch of progress had to be earned. This humble upbringing became the foundation of his character. While his friends dreamed of easier paths, he constantly pushed himself harder, developing the habits of consistency and endurance that would later define his military and political life. When he entered West Point Military Academy, Eisenhower didn't shine as the best cadet. In fact, he faced repeated failures, setbacks, and even disciplinary issues. But instead of allowing these struggles to break him, Eisenhower viewed each failure as a stepping stone. He learned to manage pressure, to adapt to challenges, and to use every defeat as a learning curve. This mindset shaped his leadership philosophy: never give up, even when success seems far away. These lessons prepared him for the extraordinary test of leadership that would come during the Second World War. When the world was on fire and tyranny threatened freedom itself, Eisenhower was entrusted with one of the most difficult responsibilities in human history: planning and leading the Allied invasion of Normandy. The weight of millions of lives and the future of civilization rested on his shoulders. Yet, Eisenhower didn't waver. He combined courage with calmness, optimism with strategy, and authority with humility. His leadership during D-Day was not just military brilliance, but also a demonstration of resilience, trust in his team, and belief in the cause of liberty. But Eisenhower's success wasn't limited to the battlefield. After the war, he could have retired with honors, celebrated as one of the greatest generals of all time. Instead, he chose to serve his country in an even greater capacity, as president. His presidency wasn't about glory, it was about responsibility. He focused on building infrastructure, strengthening the economy, advancing civil rights, and maintaining peace during the tense years of the Cold War. What's remarkable about Eisenhower's political career is how he brought his military discipline into governance. He believed in planning, preparation, and leading by example. Eisenhower's journey is often remembered for its highlights: his supreme command in World War II, his presidency, his global influence, but the real power of his story lies in the moments that were not so glamorous, the quiet struggles that demanded endurance when no one was watching. His early life in Abilene, Kansas, taught him to value honesty, discipline, and resilience. Growing up in a modest home, with 6 brothers, Eisenhower knew what it meant to share, to sacrifice, and to work harder than most to earn even the smallest comfort. These early lessons shaped his leadership style: pragmatic, disciplined, and deeply rooted in personal responsibility. What made Eisenhower different was that he never forgot where he came from. Even as a five-star general and president, he would often say that everything he learned about life started in Abilene. This humility became one of his greatest strengths. At West Point, Eisenhower faced difficulties that might have crushed a weaker spirit. He wasn't always at the top of his class, he was sometimes underestimated, and injuries even threatened his future career in the Army. But rather than quitting, he found ways to adapt. He studied harder, pushed himself physically, and learned to work with teams instead of trying to outshine them. These years were critical, because they taught him that leadership is not about being flawless, it's about persistence, patience, and inspiring others to believe in a cause larger than themselves. When World War II erupted, Eisenhower was not the most famous general. In fact, many doubted whether he could handle the immense pressure of leading Allied forces. Yet his ability to stay calm under pressure, to make tough decisions without hesitation, and to unite men from different nations and backgrounds made him the perfect leader for that moment in history. His most famous test came with the Normandy invasion, D-Day. It wasn't just about military planning, it was about courage and faith. Eisenhower knew the risks, knew that thousands of young soldiers might lose their lives, and yet he also knew the mission had to succeed if freedom was to survive. The night before the invasion, he even drafted a note taking full responsibility in case the operation failed. That humility and courage defined him. He understood that real leadership means accepting responsibility, even when outcomes are uncertain. After the war, Eisenhower could have lived as a legend of history, admired for his victories. But he wasn't satisfied with past achievements. He believed in service beyond the battlefield. So, when his nation called, he stepped into politics, a world filled with different kinds of battles. As president, Eisenhower championed infrastructure, launching the interstate highway system that transformed America's economy and connected its people. He pushed for civil rights in a time when the nation struggled with segregation.